Have you ever wondered what exactly is the truth that will make you free? Today we're going to shine some light on that subject. When I go into Blue Letter online and go to John chapter 8, there's a section where the subheading in Blue Letter says that it's the truth that will make you free, starting at verse 31. It's a famous passage of a confrontation between Yeshua, Jesus, and the Pharisees. Now, I'm going to start reading to you at verse 31. Then said Jesus to those Jews which believed on him, If ye continue in my word, then ye are my disciples indeed, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. So, right off the bat, Yeshua is relating continuing in his word to knowing the truth and being set free. So I'm going to keep reading. Next verse. They answered him, We be Abraham's seed, and were never in bondage to any man. How sayest thou, ye shall be made free? Yeshua answered them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, whosoever committeth sin is the servant of sin. And the servant abideth not in the house forever, but the Son abideth forever. If the Son therefore shall make you free, you shall be free indeed. I know that you are Abraham's seed, but ye seek to kill me, because my word hath no place in you. Now remember, Abraham had lots of children. He had Ishmael and all of his descendants, and they're included in the covenant of circumcision. Also, they were circumcised, remember that. And Abraham had more sons and daughters, not in Isaac's line, because he had a wife after Sarah died and had more children. So there are lots of people groups, all Abraham's seed. And in this verse I just finished reading, Yeshua admits that they are Abraham's seed, but then he continues in the next one. I speak that which I have seen with my father, and ye do that which ye have seen with your father. And they answered him and said unto him, Abraham is our father. And Yeshua said unto them, If ye were Abraham's children, ye would do the works of Abraham. Now we're going to stop here. When I studied this almost 9 years ago, after starting on the ancient path, and began walking out the creation calendar, and kept Sabbath and the Moedim feast, I really prayed about this verse and what did it mean. I had been so programmed to believe that works were bad. All that Old Testament Torah had been done away with, and here was Yeshua saying that a sign of being Abraham's children was the outward doing of works that Abraham from the Old Testament actually did. I asked myself, I don't see anyone preaching on this. Why not? I mean, this is the same Yeshua that in Matthew 8, verses 11 through 12 says this. And I say unto you, that many shall come from the east and the west, and shall sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the children of the kingdom shall be cast out into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So Abraham did certain works. And Yeshua says he and his sons, the patriarchs of the Old Testament, will be sitting with him at his table in the kingdom of heaven. Yet some other group of children of the kingdom will be cast in the outer darkness. I said to myself, I better find out what those works are. You know, the very best way to find out what someone's works are is to not listen to what other people want to tell you, but to actually see for yourself what they're actually doing. I always prefer people in life who walk their talk, not just jibber-jabber and chatter about stuff. And Yeshua apparently told the Pharisees that they were not doing the works. So I asked myself, well, I have been programmed to believe that works are dead and wrong, and the Pharisees were all about works, and I was just supposed to believe. So then I read Isaiah chapter 8, verse 20, and it says something I want you to pay attention to. It says, to the law and to the testimony. If they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. Now in English we see law and testimony, but in the Hebrew it is Torah and testimony. It's not the Hebrew word for law. Torah means to walk in His light. It is prescriptions for living. It is the instructions passed down. It is teachings. It is direction, and it is guidance. It is not the Hebrew word for law. In the lexicon, there are 7 different Hebrew words that have all been translated into English as law. Now, how confusing is that? It's why we study Paleo-Hebrew, the Yehudiath language, and you should come study with us. Or study on your own. There's just some things that we just don't see in English. Okay, continuing. In my journey, I eventually read the Book of Jubilees. The first time I read it completely, I had such an emotional response and spiritual upliftment from it. It lasted weeks. I was just so surprised. In chapter 1, verse 4 of the Book of Jubilees, it reads, "And Moshe, or Moses, was on the mount for 40 days and 40 nights. And Yeshua taught him the earlier and the latter history of the division of all the days of the Torah and of the testimony." Now, when I go to Blue Letter Line, and you can go there and see for yourself, search for Torah and testimony, I get 0 results. When I search for law and testimony, I get 2 results. Isaiah 8:20 that I just read to you, and Psalm 78 verse 5, where the word Torah is also being translated as law. That Psalm verse 5 reads, "For he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers that they should make known to their children." So that is saying he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a Torah for Israel. He gave them Torah. Does not say the word law there. Just let that sink in. Really, we're gonna on our channel study out the word law for you. So that means the only book I can find that says Torah and testimony as a phrase is the Book of Jubilees. Just ponder that. Many teachers in different communities used to endorse this book. They made money off YouTube teaching this book and building a base of fans who have now turned their backs on this very book. The mainstream religions ignore this book and have always done so for reasons that are not pertinent to this video. What I want to share with you today is what I gleaned from the Book of Jubilees that the seed of Abraham actually did. Not from Genesis, which does tell similar stories, but I believe is sharing them from a voice that is not pure. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that the Book of Jubilees, as we have received it today in the English, is without issues, because I have found some issues and places I believe it too has been tampered with. But that is also for another day. Right now, we're going to be able to glean some basic facts and discern enough from what we have to read from in English to answer the question of what does the seed of Abraham actually do? Because we want to sit at that table in the kingdom of heaven and do the works that Abraham did. So let's get started. Welcome to Numbering the Days channel, where we dig deep into the scriptures in Enoch, Jubilees, and the Dead Sea Scrolls, using the creation calendar and uncovering insights using the Yehudiath or Paleo-Hebrew language. Let's get started. Okay, in the left-hand column is the chapter number, and I'm going to be reading down the right-hand column. Okay, we start off with separation to keep clean. Abram learns how to read and write at 14 years of age, and he realizes how people pursue idolatry and unclean things, and he separates himself from his own father so as not to worship idols with him. So Abraham's seed is going to separate to keep clean. Next verse in chapter 11. He says a sinner's prayer for deliverance. And he began to pray to the Creator of all things that he might save him from the errors of the children of men, and that his portion should not fall into the errors after uncleanness and vileness. Now, this is one of the earliest sinner's prayers that I'm aware of, and I did a whole video on who said the first prayer for deliverance. You can go find that in our playlist and watch it. But Abraham's seed is going to pray for deliverance. That's one of the things they do. Next entry. They protect the seed sown for harvest, because Abram at a young age turned back clouds of ravens 70 times to protect the community's sown seed against the theft by the birds. We have the parable of the seed and the sower taught by Yeshua, and here we have a young boy willing to confront flocks of unclean birds, commanding them to turn back. I am sure he caught Yeshua's attention early in his life by his bravery. Now, if you think about it, Adam was told to shamar the garden, to guard, keep, and protect it, and Abram is showing at an early age that he is willing to do just that. He's willing to protect the food sources and the seeds of other people. Okay, next entry. He helps to feed the flock and teaches them how to sow and protect. The communities, with Abram's help, were able to harvest in abundance and be satisfied. What hope he must have brought to them. He taught them how to construct plows and to connect to their oxen, that they would be able to cover the seed in soil. Okay, we've got Yeshua, who talks about the parable of the sower and what kind of places that the seed is even falling upon. You can take it physically and spiritually. You can see that Abraham is helping his community literally with food, and that you can also look at this from a spiritual standpoint, that Abraham's going to help protect those in his care, his seed, spiritually and physically. Okay, and I know that lots of people in our world today, Christians and other communities, also help people. They help to feed them. They help teach them how to get water to their crops and water in the desert and all kinds of wonderful things. And that's a sign of being Abraham's seed. Okay, next entry. Willing to stand up for Yeshua and against idolatry in the family. Okay, and I'm not going to read through that, but that you can see this is in chapter 12, and I give you the verses. So, willing to stand up for our sovereign ruler and against idolatry. Destroying idols. This is in chapter 12. The Book of Jubilees says Abram burned and destroyed his father's idols. It would appear Abraham is following traditional Torah instructions as regarding idolatry long before the times of Moses and the Exodus, and it being written down there. Later in chapter 31, you can see Jacob, following in the footsteps of his grandfather, removing all things unclean and idolatrous. So destroying idols is part of what the seed actually did. Chapter 12, next entry. Chooses Yeshua, rejects false religion, cries out for deliverance, and asks for direction. And I'm not going to read down through this. You can see it in the video that I referred to. But this is something, again, asking for direction in life, rejecting false religions is part of what the seed does. Next entry. Learns Hebrew and makes his own copy and studies the Torah. Now this is part of I put this at the end of that video on the who said the first prayer for deliverance that I keep mentioning, because I thought it was interesting. The first thing that happens when Yeshua starts to speak to Abraham in his life, the first thing that Abram does before he even leaves and goes out on his journey is to learn to read the language and studies the Torah and writes himself a copy. There's something else the seed of Abraham actually does. I refer down here to Deuteronomy 17:18, where it's written about kings. It says, "And it shall be, when he sitteth upon the throne of his kingdom, that he shall write him a copy of this law in a book," that could be the Torah, in a book, out of that which is before the priests, the Levites. So here's later on Abraham's seed doing the same thing of learning how to read and writing copies. And if you think this is not for you, but you want you want to say you're a follower and you want to be in that nation of priests, that peculiar people even Peter wrote about, well, that's a Levite. And what are the priests, what are they doing? But they know how to read and they learn how to write. And this is just part of the program and what I see the seed doing. That's why it's listed here. Okay, rescue family members in distress. Abraham rescues his nephew Lot and all his family and possessions when they were kidnapped by evil kings. That's something the seed does. Refuses to keep spoils of war from the king of Sodom. Now this is one place where Jubilees will differ from Genesis. And in Jubilees, Abraham does not take one bit of the spoils of war from the king of Sodom and Gomorrah. There's no booty being taken by Abraham or his seed. He believed, the next entry, he believed in Yah, and it was counted to him for righteousness. Now the Yehudiath, or Hebrew, Paleo-Hebrew word used for our English quote-unquote believed, includes the understanding that you actually walk out and live out what you profess with your mouth to believe. Abram took the promises and the ways of Yah, believed them, and walked them out. He did them based upon knowing Yah's word was truth. This understanding is clear in the Book of Jubilees in the story of Abraham. So, it's actually believing it but walking it out. It's doing, believing and doing. Okay. Renews the covenant of Noah and keeps the calendar. Abraham renewed and kept the covenant of Yah made with Noah and his sons after the flood. If you study Jubilees and the dates events occur on, you will see that Abraham kept the heavenly calendar given to his ancestors Enoch and then Noah, and now it was tasked to him to renew the covenant and keep Jubilees chapter 6. This is not the covenant of circumcision. And if you're not familiar with what I'm speaking about, please go watch our Feast of Weeks Shavuot video, because we go into this, and that would be something you definitely would want to watch. Next entry. Obeys the commandments to walk in a perfect manner. It says in Jubilees 15 verse 4, I am Yahuwah Almighty. Approve yourself before me and be you perfect. And I will make my covenant between me and you, and I will multiply you exceedingly. Now this was also written in Genesis 17:1. The Yehudiath Paleo-Hebrew word translated as perfect here in English is a good word to research and understand. Being human, remember this, being human, Abraham accomplished this instruction. He was not being asked to do something that he couldn't do because he actually did it. Now, we think of perfection as like the perfect Lamb of Yah that has no spot or blemish. So that's where the English words can trip you up, because the word here for perfect is tamim, and it means that you become complete and mature, not that you have not one spot or blemish, like we think of in English as perfect, okay? So Abraham became mature. He became complete as a human the way that Yah had created him to be. Okay, so he walked obedient to what he was taught in a good manner. Okay, another then sign of being the Abraham seed, and what do? Is they receive a new name. Some get their name changed after walking and being accepted. There are several stories in chapter 15 there and chapter 32 you can read about, but they usually receive a new name. Their character, their reputation is changed by being a part of Yah's family. You'll see that when you read those out. Remember, this is just a summary I'm going through. I'm not going to go through all these in detail. Okay, next entry we have perform circumcision on the 8th day. That we're all familiar with the covenant of circumcision, and that's in Jubilees as well. And that got passed down. Receive from angels the name of children. I thought this was interesting. He and Sarah named their son after the name given to them from heaven. In Yehudiath, Isaac's name refers to righteousness, resurrection, and the statutes of Elohim. It's not what it is in Strong's. But they received the name of Isaac. And there's other stories in Scripture of the seeds of Abraham receiving names from the Shamaim. Okay, builds booths and celebrates the fall feast, which was called in Jubilees the Festival of Yahuwah. Abraham was the first to celebrate this feast on earth per the Book of Jubilees. This chapter is also an interesting read to understand the scope of all the joy Abraham and Sarah had and the reasons for celebrating long before the Exodus. But they keep the Moedim. The seed are doing the Moedim all throughout Jubilees. Keep the Feast of Weeks and Shavuot. Abraham kept this feast. Was full of joy because Isaac and Ishmael were both there. And the Book of Jubilees shows the harmony between those two brothers. Proven to be faithful during affliction and trials. There's a couple chapters there, but it's interesting giving the understanding of how much Abraham was tested. I mean, the seed of Abraham get tested, and they're refined. And his blessings were not just because he gave a verbal mental belief. He was tested over and over to be proven faithful and a lover of Yah, and was not slow to act. He actually did. It wasn't just full of talk. Okay, another thing I see the seed of Abraham actually doing is praising Yah and giving thanksgiving. The Book of Jubilees shows how often the patriarchs' prayers and blessings of their children and praises to Yah. It's all in the book. They act with integrity, they keep covenant, and they obey his voice. Abraham and his sons kept agreements. They acted with integrity. They gave thanks and praise. It was often on their lips to Yah, and they kept their part of the covenants. When Yah gave instruction, they acted. They celebrate and keep the spring feast, the festival of Yahuwah, there too. Abraham and Sarah were the first to keep the spring feast, we now call Pesach and unleavened bread. Be sure to read about this and how this was a festival of great joy long before the Exodus. If you go to our Moedim playlist, go back and start in the spring feast and start watching the videos there, and you'll see this. You'll also see this unfold if you go back in our calendar studies playlist and start following week to week, because all this is unfolding on the calendar. Okay, another thing the seed of Abraham do is they guard children and they keep instructions from their elders. Abraham's seed, Isaac and Jacob, followed Abraham's Torah instructions to them, and those passed down from Enoch, Noah, and others before him. All this is documented in the book, and so the Torah instructions are being passed down generation after generation, and they're doing them. Okay, they actively bless their children, grandchildren, and teach them. They don't sit them in front of cell phones and TVs or expect some other entities in the world to teach their children. They actively do it themselves. Next entry, they dig the wells of their fathers, tend the flocks, and find living water. Now there's a lot of that I could say about this. Like I said, when we study the Book of Jubilees in detail, we'll get into all this and all the things that this means, but this is part of what they're doing. Okay. They make vows and keep them. They just don't make idle promises. They follow through on what they vow. They care deeply about whom their children marry. That's a big one. They send supplies, food, needed items, livestock to their aging parents on a routine basis to take care of their needs. This shows up for the first time in week 13. In this week's study, in week 13, you're going to see this happen for the first time. And it happens on a routine basis through the book. Execute judgment, next entry, execute judgment based upon Yah's Torah. They actually carry things out. It's not idle threats, or, how many times have we read in the prophets where Yahuwah laments the fact that his people are not executing judgment. They do not give their daughters or sisters to the seed of the Gentiles, nor do the women marry into the seed of the Gentiles, neither do the men of Yah marry daughters of the Gentiles. Read about it in chapter 30. There's a lot that we could say there, and I'm just going to keep going. They know how to and do purify themselves before the feasts. This is something they do. They make sure their parents and grandparents are included at the feast and attended to during the feasts. Their parents help their children fulfill their vows. Parents are active in the lives of their children even when they're growing up. They bless their children and pray for them. This is a testimony on the tablets in heaven. So, do you bless your children and pray for them actively? That's part of what the seed of Abraham does. Next entry, one of the many examples of dreams, visions given to the seed to help them, guide them, support them in life. So the seed of Abraham have an active, living connection to the heavens and to receiving help. Yah helps your remembrance. Yah helped Jacob to remember everything he was shown in a dream and to write it all down. Enoch was shown much and wrote much. Many prophets are helped through the Ruach to remember and to write. And in John 14:16 and 26, this carries forward. Pay attention. And I will pray the Father, and he shall give you another comforter, that he may abide with you forever. The Comforter, which is the Ruach HaKodesh, whom the Father will send in my name, he shall teach you all things, and bring all things to your remembrance, whatsoever I have said unto you. It's the same word, it's the same action that's in Jubilees is mentioned here in the book of John. So it's part of what the seed of Abraham does. Okay, next entry. They consider incest a grave, abominable sin with huge consequences. It is, again, there's judgment being carried out. It's not something brushed off. They recount their sins once a year and grieve on the Day of Atonement for the ramifications of their actions upon others. See, they're keeping the Moedim of Yah. Respect is given to mothers as well as fathers. The Book of Jubilees has numerous examples of balanced parenting that show this verse. Proverbs 1, chapter 1, verse 8. My son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the Torah of thy mother. Instruction of father and perfect Torah of the mother. This is in my adding the little word perfect there, because that's what I see in the Yehudiath. But you're respecting both your mother and your father, and that respecting of the mother is in Jubilees. Okay, the seed also instruct their children in peacemaking and brotherly love. Both the mothers and the fathers teach this in Jubilees. Children consult with the head of the family, both parents, in making major decisions, or to the king. This is in Jubilees chapter 28. They do not lie nor commit adultery. Now the general character traits, the word Shem in Paleo-Hebrew that means name, that's your character. The Shem of the Abraham seed, they walk in uprightness, without pride or arrogance. They're no respecter of persons. They do not accept gifts, but judge in uprightness. Now the oldest brothers take care of the deceased brother's wife. That's part of what the seed does. They do not commit fornication with their in-laws. Their family celebrations are with bread and wine. Does that sound familiar? Family members take care of each other and provide for their needs in times of calamity and famine. So we have reached the end of the basic list that I gleaned when I began to study the Book of Jubilees. It has been well received with the people that I've shared it with. But I want you to take a moment more and just think with me. If you were to glean the stories in Genesis on the same group of people, would you come to the same conclusion? I had to answer this question not exactly. You see, if you really pay attention, you'll notice lots of differences that begin to add up. and it has to do primarily with the character of the people, their Shem, who we think they were or are, and what kind of role models they are. When I asked myself why I felt such an uplift in my Ruach after reading the book for the first time, that was one of the few reasons that I identified. Does the seed of Abraham lie about who they are to save their life, as Genesis says Abraham did to Pharaoh, because of fear? Or did the story happen the way Jubilees tells it? Did Jacob split his family and possessions into two groups who crossed the Jordan before he did, alone without their leader, and when he crossed he bows down in submission to Esau? Or did the story happen the way Jubilees tells it? The list we just reviewed in this video gives you a certain impression of the behavior and the character of the seed of Abraham. Now I challenge you to go to Genesis and start comparing. Think about what we have been showing you on this channel from the beginning. We put all the stories from Jubilees onto the calendar, and behold, it has shown us that the seed of Abraham and Noah before them were keeping the Moedim feast and establishing the patterns for later generations to follow. We showed you that Abraham was the first person in Scripture to say a sinner's prayer and ask for deliverance, establishing the pattern for all generations to come. Remember, he knew about Messiah and his days to come and rejoice. Remember, Jesus Yeshua is his seed. Imagine how the standards of behavior might improve if the summary in this video was taught in sermons and YouTube teachings. So let us revisit the beginning of the video. Isaiah 8:20 is something to go reread and let it sink in. Ask yourself, what does it mean to you? If you believe the Book of Jubilees is a fraud and a fake, then I only ask you to make sure you've listened for yourself to the teachers out there with good videos for you to watch that give sound evidence it is a valid book of Scripture to consider. I've placed a few of these videos for you on our channel in a playlist called the Book of Jubilees. Make sure you are not dismissing something without hearing all the evidence. Remember, Yeshua Jesus said that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were going to be in his kingdom at his table. Which cast of characters do you think that would be? I know what I believe because I have done a lot of verifying of evidence and reading. I hope you come to an informed opinion. Even if you disagree with me, you owe it to yourself to go through this exercise, test, and verify for yourself what you believe. I hope you have enjoyed this video and it will lead to more light shining on your journey. Shalom.